All right, we ready?
Yeah. Let me make sure.
Hi, Dave. All right, hey, thanks for tuning in. We would like to introduce to you the first session of the chopping block, where we take things that have gotten ruthlessly edited out of our sermons and put onto our chopping block, and we get to bring them to you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm Ben Deaver, and this is
Dave Geldart,
and we're on staff with
Tallgrass Community Church.
Okay, so that's us. So we're a new church plant started in April here in Manhattan, Kansas, and we want to welcome all of you. So these little sessions, these chopping block sessions, are for our Tallgrass family, both those who meet with us regularly, weekly, and those who are part of our extended family who've been sent out and all over the world, and anyone else who happens to stumble upon us. So hopefully these videos can be at least a little bit helpful for someone. So today we're talking tawG, and tawG is
Time alone with
God.
God.
All right.
The G is big.
Yeah. So if you're gonna hashtag it, it's TAW, all lowercase,
G,
uppercase G. tawG. Time alone with God. Of course, we absolutely encourage daily time with God, but what we're talking about is a weekly extended time with God. So we'd encourage you to carve out of your cramped schedule. We know everyone's busy, or at least feels busy. A 2-hour block every week to spend time alone with God. So we'd encourage you, commit to this like it's a weekly appointment in your calendar. Commit to it like it's maybe even more important than your weekly staff meeting, because maybe it is more important than your weekly staff meeting. And then show up to this weekly appointment and see what God has to say to you. See what he has to say about how you should live your life. I want to hear from Dave here in a second about what's been working for him and how he's lived this out. But want to throw this out. For all you football fans out there, and we know there are a lot of them, they're not necessarily all in our church, but we are on an amazing Chiefs playoffs run, so we want to throw in this little analogy. You got to win on first down, friends. Did you know that first down success is key to third down conversions, according to a random article I recently read from 2008? Actually, this truism does apply to tawG, to time alone with God. Winning first down is key to setting the stage for success. What I mean by that is pick a place, pick a time, pick what you'll do with your time on the front end. What will you read? How will you pray? Even down to what journal will you use? What pens do you like to use to write in? I'd even encourage you to set out your clothes the night before so that in the morning you're not spending all this time thinking, okay, what am I going to do? Where am I headed? What am I wearing? All these decisions are going to be distractions that early in the morning. In fact, you may end up sleeping in, punting on 4th and long to round out that analogy. So set the stage for success. So, Dave, do you have any ways you've set your stage for success, or over the years? I know you've been doing this for a few years now.
Yeah, it's been really helpful for me to go ahead and just pick a spot, like he was saying, pick a time, pick a spot, put it in my Google Calendar. At least for my personality, if I can go ahead and just solidify it, decide I'm going to do it, it really goes a long way to helping me get it going and then keep it going. So what I did a number of years ago is I just decided Friday mornings before work is going to be my once a week tawG. 2 hours before work. I usually have to be at work around 9 so 7 a.m. And I went ahead and picked the Radina's Bakehouse. That's where I'm at least currently, and I think I've been there for a while.
Great spot in Manhattan, Kansas, by the way.
It is, yeah. I get one of the tables on the left if it's available. And what's been helpful for me to, besides going ahead and just deciding I'm going to do it, is to kind of give myself, at least on the front end, just enough structure so I don't give up, but also enough flexibility and grace, freedom, so that I don't feel like I have this regimented schedule. So I could go into some of the specific things I have tended to do during that time. But
share a few specifics. That'd be great.
Yeah, so especially for me early on, it was I knew pretty quick that I needed to pick up journaling. Journaling is something that I never really decided I was going to do before this, but definitely heard from folks that it was very helpful. And I tend to be a little bit more emotionally reserved. It's harder for me to connect with my emotions, connect with God. And so I knew that this would be a tool I needed, even though I didn't want to. Maybe especially because I didn't want to. So I got a journal, and what has been helpful for me is just committing to write out my thoughts unedited. So if I'm thinking it, I go ahead and write it. If it's a bad word, it's going on there, and I write like it's never going to be read by anyone else. I'm not writing for posterity for myself. I'm not writing something, an article. This is something no one's going to ever read, and it's a tool for me to get my thoughts out. And what tends to happen invariably for me is that they kind of turn into prayers. I assume that God is watching and God is reading. And it's been so helpful for me to slow down. My brain processes pretty quick. So quick that for me, the slowing down and the writing out has actually been extremely helpful.
That's really good. One thing a few years ago, I know Dave read and encouraged me to read was The Call to Joy in Pain by Ajith Fernando. Just an example of a book that the type of book you might also use during this time. And I took this from him, where he disciplined himself to read just one chapter and no further. And force him to kind of internalize the message of that chapter. And then the next week, what he did and I began to do was go back and review the previous chapter and then read the next chapter. And the exciting thing is when you desire to keep reading, but you've already disciplined yourself to slow down and really chew on, and in a way be mentored by this author who's not even there with you. I thought that was a cool little tip too.
Yeah, that was really helpful.
And I'd encourage all of you, find some accountability for this. This is a hard meeting to prioritize for most people. You would think that meeting with the creator of the universe would be compelling in and of itself, but there are many factors to keep you from that. Yeah. Some of them just day-to-day normal things. Some of it spiritual warfare. So
for me, there was some fear too.
Yeah.
What am I going to do for 2 hours? I'm going to get 5 minutes in. I'm going to be done. And I experienced that when I got started. Yeah. And I just went ahead and anticipated it. Like, I know I'm going to get 10, 15 minutes into this thing, and then I'm going to be toast. Yeah. And so what at least for me was helpful was I went ahead and from the get-go, I committed to that 2-hour block I was going to be there. And if I start getting antsy and I feel done in like 20 minutes, okay. But I'm going to still be there. And the forcing myself to just continue to sit, even sometimes in boredom and annoyance, helped to kind of strengthen my muscles over time to continue to stay engaged with God. And it also forced me to listen. Yeah. It's something that I'm not naturally good at in prayer.
It's a good analogy too, strengthening the muscles of time with God. You know, we kind of understand how to sit in disciplines and push through for things we want, but yeah, sometimes just sitting through and facing your fears and potential boredom and being alone and finding that eventually God will meet you there. Let's see, what else is helpful? What else is...
You want to talk about writing out scriptures?
Oh yeah, one thing that is very helpful for me, whether I'm preaching on a passage or just want to slow myself down and really ruminate and meditate and think on a passage, is simply to handwrite the passage out, double spaced, and it invariably, it always slows me down, no matter, even if I've memorized that passage or I've already taught on it a couple times or I'm very familiar with it. When I write it out, there's just things I see I've never seen, or God is speaking to me in a way He's never spoken before. And then it also, when I double space, it gives me a little bit of room in there to take another colored pen and go back and just write out my questions or write out my observations. And this is good for when you're beginning, to prepare to teach a passage, but also just reflecting on it for you personally. So that's been very helpful for me.
Me too.
Let's see, what else here? I think, and Dave really talked about the importance of having a plan of what you're going to do, or especially early on, the more you have a plan, the better it will go for you. But then over time, that's great. We're going to get to that meeting in a second. Over time, as your plan is disrupted and maybe you don't get through everything you planned and you find yourself lingering in that phrase or in that verse, that's a good thing. That's when you know your time alone with God is growing and becoming more and more rich, and you want more of that. And how amazing would it be if these extended times with God were more than weekly? But
Yeah.
What
So
else,
in
Dave?
general, for me, if you're looking for just a real quick, and this is, we can maybe wrap up after this, but a real quick, what I do is I start out in the time, and I have something I'm reading through in the scriptures, and oftentimes I'll just force myself to write out a verse or two, and then I ponder that a little bit while I munch on a little food and get the coffee flowing. And then I draw a line. I write just any thoughts I have about that passage, and then I move on. Usually, it's to some book I'm reading, and read the chapter, and then draw a line, write some notes from that chapter. And then after that, if I've got some extra time, I go ahead and just kind of move into prayer. Sometimes I sit, but starting to get in the habit of praying for others during that time has been really helpful for me. I don't do it every time. It's kind of become a grab bag of things I can do at that time. And it's been very helpful. And I even get the sense that maybe even talking about how do you pray, how do you start thinking about prayer, that could be maybe another one of these sessions we do.
Yeah.
So get started.
So are you doing tawG? How's it going for you? What are your successes? What are your failures? What are you doing? Please share with us any way you can. And we're always trying to learn more, and we want to help each other grow. So. And do you need suggestions for what to read or how to pray? We'd love to meet with and encourage any of you who hear this. And are there topics that you'd like to see us maybe attempt to cover in a future session of the chopping block?
Yep.
And we don't know how frequently these will be. But thanks for tuning in on this first session of the chopping block. Tallgrass Church for more. We'll see you later.
We'll see you later.
Something like that.